Are you a beginning cheesemaker wondering what kind of cheese you should make first? Well, after making a ton of cheese, literally a ton, I've learned which ones are essential to master first. So in this video, I'll show you 7 cheeses for beginners to start with. Let's pretend that cheese making is like a swimming pool. Some people like to cannonball straight in. Other people like to sit on the edge and just dip their toes. And some people like to get in the pool via the stairs, gradually entering the water one step at a time. There are no wrong ways to enter the pool, except for diving headfirst into the shallow end. Do not do that. But this video is specifically for those who like to enter via the stairs. Take the stairs as fast or as slow as you need. The important thing is that you keep going. Okay, so now it's time to get our toes wet. I picked this first cheese because it teaches one of the oldest cheese making techniques. What is this technique? Learning to use a cheesecloth to drain curd. There are 2 reasons why this is important, and they might not be what you think. First, hanging curd to drain immediately raises a whole bunch of problems. What is cheesecloth? Where do I hang it? For how long? Is it going to be messy? These are the necessary logistics that this first lesson forces you to consider and figure out. And second, hanging curd helps you get comfortable with something that feels so wrong. Learning to let dairy sit out at room temperature. This is a huge mental hurdle for beginners to overcome. So let's take it one step at a time. Put a liter of plain yogurt, it can be homemade or store-bought, into a cheesecloth. And how do you know what kind of cheesecloth to get? Well, if the weave of the cloth is too tight, the whey will not drain out. And if it is too loose, all the yogurt will just go right through. So look for a cloth that says it is 90 weave. That's the number for the thread count. But how do you hang up a towel that is full of goopy yogurt? Well, you've got options. You can tie the opposite corners together, creating a big bulky knot. Or you can tie the corners using a Stilton knot, like I am demonstrating right here. Either way, once you have the knot, then slide a wooden spoon handle beneath it or through it, and then use that handle as a bridge that you can rest between cabinet knobs or over the top of a kettle. Or you can use an S-hook. Hook the one bottom through the knot and put the top over a rod to hang the bag from, or over the faucet of your kitchen sink. Every kitchen is different, and this cheese forces you to get creative with the space and the tools that you have. Now you just let the yogurt drain. Make sure there is a bowl underneath the bag to catch the whey, and hang it ideally in a coolish spot. Then all you do is wait. In cheese making, there is a lot of waiting. So get used to it. For this cheese, it takes about 2 days. You first let the yogurt drain for 12 to 24 hours. And at that point, you open up the bag, add a teaspoon of salt, stir it in, and then you retie the bag and rehang it for another 12 to 24 hours. Now at this point, you have a thick, creamy, tangy cheese that is very similar to cream cheese, but without all the fat and additives. Store this cheese in the fridge, spread it on bread, mix in herbs to make it a dip, or use it in savory and sweet dishes. So what is this cheese called? Yogurt cheese. And the same hanging technique you used here to make this cheese can be applied to many other cheeses that you are going to eventually learn. Now, if you are looking for a super fast cheese so you can celebrate a quick win, this next one is perfect. It is small batch and it is fast. So it's ideal for beginners. The key technique that you're going to learn with this cheese is how to coagulate milk with an acid. Now there are 2 main ways to thicken or set the milk. There's acid coagulation. That's where you use an acid such as vinegar or lemon juice, citric acid, or even soured milk. And then there is rennet coagulation, which is mainly used for aged cheeses. For this cheese, we're going to use the acid method, and here's how it works. Heat a liter of milk until it is hot and steamy, and then you add some fresh lemon juice a little bit at a time, stirring constantly, and then the milk separates into curds and whey, and that's it. It is magic. You have just coagulated the milk and made cheese, curds, and whey. But there is more to this cheese. After the curds form, you'll gather them in a cloth, here we are with the cheesecloth again, and press out the extra whey and shape the cheese. So why do we start with this cheese? It's quick, so you can practice it as often as you like. It's endlessly customizable. Add herbs and spices, or you can experiment with different acids to see how they work. And there's no aging, so you get instant results and feedback. So what cheese is this? It's paneer, a staple in Indian cooking. And if you want a deep dive into this cheese, check out the full video I did about this cheese on this channel. Now, for this next cheese, we are going to coagulate milk with the second option, which is rennet. But what exactly is rennet? Well, it's an ingredient that helps milk thicken and solidify by helping the proteins to bond together into a curd. Rennet can come from animals, it can come from mold and a fungus, it can come from plants, and it can come from a lab. I use animal rennet, but any kind will work, so just use what you have. Now, rennet doesn't just set the curd differently than it does with an acid. It actually creates a texture that is unique, and this next cheese is the perfect introduction to how this works. You get to see the milk transform into curd, which is like magic, and then for the first time, you get to get hands-on, squeezing and kneading and shaping the cheese with your hands. This step can feel very intimidating for beginners. Many of us are taught that touching dairy is exposing it to dirt and it's dangerous and that it'll make us sick. But getting comfortable with the feel of rennet set curd is a necessary part of becoming a cheesemaker, and it is totally safe. I first learned to make this cheese in Nicaragua. It's called cuajada, and cuajar in Spanish means to set. Cuajada is simple to make, and it can last at room temperature for days, making it a good cheese for those places that do not have access to good refrigeration, like the community that we lived in Nicaragua. So how do you make it? Well, let me tell you. You add rennet to warm milk, and then once the milk sets, you just gently squeeze out the whey until you are left with the ball of curds, which you knead and salt and shape into a ball of cuajada. And that's it. You've made a fresh, delicious cheese that is ready to eat. From start to finish, it just takes an hour, so you can make this cheese late afternoon in time to serve it for supper along with a big pot of red beans and some thick, fresh corn tortillas. Buen provecho. Now, this next cheese is where the various components that you have already learned begin to come together. With this cheese, you are going to cut and stir the curds. Cutting and stirring is a major step forward, and it is required for almost all pressed and aged cheeses. When you cut the curds, you create surface area, and the size that you cut your curds impacts the texture of the final cheese. Big pieces hold more moisture, making a softer cheese, and smaller pieces release more whey, resulting in firmer, drier cheeses. You don't need fancy tools for this. A long knife, a balloon whisk, or even just your hands works perfectly, and I prefer using my hands. Once you've cut the curds, it is time to stir. And stirring does two things. It keeps the curds from sticking back together, and it helps them to release more whey. And here's what I recommend. Use your hands and not a spoon, because your hands let you feel what is happening. Are the curds getting firmer? Are they shrinking? Your hands will tell you this. And if you find curds that are too big, you simply just pop or tear them with your fingers. It's not a big deal. Now next, you cook the curds, which involves gently and slowly heating them as you stir. This cooking and stirring firms up the curds even more, and it is very important that you do not rush this process. Heating too quickly forms a rind on the outside, which traps moisture on the inside, which is the opposite of what you want. Cutting and cooking curds and then being able to determine when they're done requires a bit of practice, so plan to repeat this cheese several times. The good news is there is no aging with this cheese, so you'll get to taste your results right away and connect them with what you did and what you got. So what is this cheese? It's queso fresco. Queso means cheese, fresco means fresh, and since this cheese is eaten fresh, you don't need to make a big batch, and you don't need to worry about getting it exactly right, which frees you up to enjoy the whole experience of learning these skills. All right, this next cheese builds directly on what you just learned with queso fresco. You're still using culture and rennet, and it's still eaten fresh, but now you're adding a new skill, stretching the curd. Instead of just cooking and stirring, you're going to learn to watch how curds evolve as they acidify naturally over time. So here's how it works. After you cut the curds and stir them for a little bit, you let them sit. And as they rest, the culture that you added earlier eats the lactose and turns it into lactic acid, and the curds are acidifying slowly and on their own time. Your job is to wait and watch. Generally, 4 to 8 hours. I told you there's a lot of waiting with cheese making. Every so often you check the curd with a stretch test. Pull off a small piece and put it in a mug, and then you add some almost boiling hot water to it and stir it. First, if it's not ready, it will not stretch. It will just tear or crumble. And that means that it hasn't acidified enough. But when it has acidified properly, the cheese will pull into a long glossy strand, like taffy or like melted cheese on a pizza. And the moment this happens is so wild. It is so much fun. There is something so deeply satisfying about watching these crumbly curds just transform into silky and stretchy mozzarella. Do-do-do-do. Now, with this next cheese, we are hitting two important parts of cheese making. One, for the first time, you are not making a cheese to eat right away. Two, you are learning a brand new technique that's called washing the curds. What does that even mean? Do you just dump them into the bathtub and lather them up with soap? No. Washing means that after cutting and stirring the curds, you remove some of the whey and replace it with water. This does two things. Whey is acidic, so by removing some of the whey and replacing it with water, you are reducing the acidity, which makes the final cheese sweeter. And two, depending on the temperature of the cheese, you are either cooking the curds or cooling them down. Once you learn how washing works, you can apply this technique to all different kinds of recipes. It's a lot of fun. Now, up until now, everything we've made has been fresh, ready to eat right away. But this cheese needs time to rest so that the bacteria can do its good work. So this leads to the second technique that this cheese teaches, which is how to age your cheese. With this cheese, as with many cheeses, you have options. You can vacuum seal it, which is simple and allows you to age it in a lot of different aging conditions. You can wax it, which is beginner friendly and very satisfying. And you can natural rind age it, which takes a little bit more attention, but can be crazy fun. And of course, you can age it for different lengths of time. You can age it for 1 month for a fresher, more mild cheese, or you can age it for, 12 months or 2 years to get a much sharper, more interesting, flavorful cheese. So this cheese pulls together nearly every skill that you have learned so far. It's a milestone cheese, and it's a big lesson in the patience that is required for serious cheese making. So what cheese is this? It's Gouda. It is a true classic, so sweet and creamy and utterly irresistible. You're gonna love it. Okay, now the final step in this cheese-making staircase is totally different from anything you've done so far. And even though it might seem complicated at first, it's actually pretty straightforward. This next cheese involves a step called cheddaring. And I think you can probably guess what the name of this cheese is. So what does it mean to cheddar a cheese? Well, after you've cooked and stirred the curds, as you did with the queso fresco and with the Gouda, instead of immediately pressing them, you pour off the whey and then let the curds sit in the bottom of the pot, where they will knit together into a slab of curd. And then you slice that slab into pieces and stack those pieces on top of each other. And then every 15 or 20 minutes or so, you restack the slabs, moving the ones at the bottom to the top and the top ones to the bottom. So what's happening during this time? Well, the weight of the stacked slabs are expressing more whey, and the curds are acidifying, changing the texture from crumbly to smooth and shiny, and the taste from milky and sweet to tangy and flavorful. Once the curds are properly cheddared, then you mill them, which simply means that you cut them into pieces and add salt before proceeding with pressing. And yes, in case you haven't guessed the name of the cheese, it is cheddar. Oh my gosh, you guys, look around you. You're not on the stairs anymore. You are in the water. Congratulations. How does it feel? You are a cheesemaker. Now, even though you are slinging and splashing milk like a boss, you still have one problem. How can you use and adapt the techniques you've acquired thus far to make all the other kinds of cheese that you crave? There are loads of key moments in the cheese making process where you have options, and the little decisions you make at these points have an enormous impact on the type of cheese that you end up with. So in the next video, I show 5 of these decision points. Watch that now, and happy milk slinging.